Well, it's great to be back in New York at App Promo Summit, and obviously there's a lot of new news in the Apple and Google ecosystems that will be hitting over the next 6 months. So I didn't want to just rehash that news, but I wanted to tell you how Gummicube is dealing with it and how we're thinking about some of these changes that are going to affect App Store optimization over the next 6 to 12 months. Perfect. All right. So first, I just want to talk a little bit about how we think about the next generation of App Store optimization. One of the things that I always want to hit on is this is not SEO for apps. The app stores are stores. This is e-commerce optimization. And whenever you're working with keywords, metadata, whenever you're A/B testing, what you're really doing is feeding an algorithm that Apple and Google use that says, hey, I have a product in my store. Let me see all of the traffic inputs that come from the store, all of the outputs, meaning who actually buys or downloads that product, figure out where you're relevant, and then merchandise you through the stores. What you're doing with keyword optimization is giving Apple and Google suggestions about where to start learning, and from there, they start merchandising you based on the audiences that you convert against in the store. Really good ASO doesn't start with the phrase, which keyword do you care about most? What do you want to target? It starts with a conversation about what are your features and who are your audiences. And the store window has really expanded. When you look, a few years ago, you had one store listing. Now you've got custom product pages, custom store listings, you've got in-app events, all of these things to work with to give you more opportunities to highlight what you have to different audiences and understand how the products that you have and the features that you're working with are relevant from a seasonal standpoint. We want to use these features, and we want to really personalize. Personalization is the future of App Store optimization because now, with these tools, users are expecting to find what they're looking for much faster, whether that's going from a search term right to a page that's relevant for them or actually going to deep link into the app to actually use those products and features that they came for. Now, Apple has introduced some interesting new features at WWDC that I want to get into and just share a little bit about how we're thinking of those features. The first one is featured nomination. So they're trying to make it a little less of a black box in terms of how they decide what to feature in the store. So in App Store Connect now, you're going to have this convenient area where you can say, hey, feature me. I have a new build, and here's what we're doing. The challenge is now that Apple is formalizing this process, they're going to get like millions of these on a daily basis. It's going to be crazy. And the only way to really stand above that noise is to make sure every time you have a new release, every time you have a new feature, literally as part of your ASO process, you fill this out, you do a submission, and you make sure that you're at least available for consideration. This is a new step. It's something that we're going to be working on with our partners on a regular basis to implement. But there is one caveat, and that caveat is getting featured in the App Store, especially if you're a brand that people might recognize, generally has a fairly low conversion rate on impressions compared to what you're doing in search and what you're doing in other areas that are more relevant, where there's more intention. So don't go changing your screenshots or your descriptions or what you're doing for ASO, hoping it will attract Apple more to get a feature, because that feature is not going to replace the relevance that you lose from changing some of those things that'll affect you more algorithmically. So look at those things separately. Apple is also enabling people who are not creatives to go in and build some marketing assets. Essentially, they're taking the Apple look and feel of how they feature apps, and they're hoping that developers and publishers will take that look and feel, build these assets, and promote them in their own social media. They're trying to create an ecosystem of trust, that when you see something that looks and feel like the App Store, a new feature being announced, something going on, that you can trust it, that Apple is kind of involved and affiliated with it. I don't think this necessarily replaces all of the other forms of marketing and creative that brands are using to promote what they're doing with their apps. However, I do think that it's going to become an important thing to include in that mix, because Apple and Google, or Apple in this case, more and more is going to expect you to do it, and the more you play in your ecosystem, the more that will probably benefit you, the more consumers will kind of view what you're doing in a trusted way. This is the most important update, I think, came from Apple. There will be deep links in custom product pages. And so from now on, when you're building out custom product pages, you can complete that journey for end users and send users directly into the part of the app that they actually came for. For media companies, for news companies, for any product that has more than one audience that they're targeting, this is going to be huge. For people that don't do it, it's going to be disastrous, because what's going to happen is Those with custom product pages are going to have lower costs of acquisition because the top end of their funnel is going to perform better. Those who have deep links are going to have better engagement, perhaps better monetization, because people are finding exactly what they're looking for. And as a result, they're probably going to be able to start spending a little bit more on user acquisition. Their metrics are going to get better. And those who aren't doing that are going to be less competitive in terms of not just how they rank in the store from a conversion standpoint, but also what they can afford to do from a paid user acquisition standpoint. So this is going to be very, very important. Our creative team was really excited about this before they were not super excited about this. So it looks like Apple is no longer going to have to force you to generate multiple variants of screenshots every time you want to do a test or update the creative on your store listing. The problem with this is anything auto-generated never looks exactly perfect. And so unless your audience is primarily only using one device, if you have the resources to, we are absolutely advising to continue building out unique screenshots for every size of iPhone and iPad so you can control what that user experience looks like, particularly if you've done a lot of work from a conversion optimization standpoint. Whenever Apple says we're giving you something new, but we're also allowing you to do it the old way, it actually means that if you put the work in, the old way might actually work better for you, right? So don't just kind of default to the automatic way of doing things. It might not be a good idea. But for new developers, for people experimenting, it might be good because you don't need so much more, you don't need so many resources to kind of do those build outs. On the subscription side, I think the win-back offers that Apple has announced are going to be as important as in-app events were when Apple introduced those. They're going to give people who already have an installed base more market share inside the store, more shelf space and opportunities to address an audience that they know is already relevant. I don't just look at win-back offers as how you do win-back. From an ASO standpoint, I look at it as how you get more shelf space in the store. And just like in-app events, where Apple actually indexed the content of the in-app events and ranked you for more keywords, I'm interested in seeing how Apple is indexing content that might go into win-back offers and other things that are exposed in the store as well, and how that might affect ASO in addition to market share. So that's something that we're watching. The other thing that I thought was interesting was they're changing the search presentation inside iOS for users. They're doing this thing called focus state, and they're essentially taking a page from Google where there are going to be some customized suggestions for users when they search based on what they might have searched for in the past. But all of those suggestions are derived from search suggestions that already existed. So users, if they're looking for something that they already might have downloaded in the past, that's going to populate, and then the search suggestions appear right below it. So it's not like Google. It's not where all of a sudden all of the suggestions on the device are going to be customized to a user. Just a few of them at the very top of the results will be. And then everything else, when you look at that search suggestion list where people start to do the type in and the auto population occurs, that's going to be kind of the typical search suggestions. I'm interested in seeing how this affects user behavior. And from my perspective, when people are discovering new apps, I don't really think it's going to take away from search suggestions, because in reality, if you're trying to discover something new, you're probably not searching for something that you searched for in the past, right? So you're still going to be looking for that list. It might have an impact on redownloads, which I think could be interesting. There are also some new analytics in App Store Connect. I'm not going to go through, verbally each one of these different analytic tools that Apple's introducing, but what I will say is that they really veer toward engagement. They really veer toward monetization and kind of what's going on after the download and the user experience. This is interesting to me because whenever I see Apple or Google introduce new analytics in their dashboards, typically 6 months later, you start to see some of those things creep into the algorithms, right? And so one of the first things that we're looking for is, will Apple become a little bit more like Google now that they have these things? Will they start tracking crash rates? Will that affect your ability to get placement in the store? Will Apple start looking at engagement? Today they don't. There's a lot of people, online, if you read blogs, many of them that aren't correct about ASO, they'll say, oh, they track engagement or backlinks matter or things like that. And we all know that, that's just horrible advice. You shouldn't listen to it. But anything that goes inside App Store Connect is something we might want to start paying attention to. And if you're looking at your metrics and you're not changing anything from an ASO standpoint, but you see your engagement increase and any sort of correlation to what's going on in the store, we all want to be having those conversations and tracking that now. There are also some new marketing features on the Google Play Store. Obviously, I have to talk a little bit about promotional content because I love it. It gives you a lot more placement in the store. Google promotes it, helps drive engagement and re-engagement. But one of the things that Google's doing now is they're introducing eligibility requirements, meaning if your app does not have a certain DAU, if it's not a certain size, they're going to basically take anything that they've redefined as a premium developer tool away from you. Which is not good. It's going to put smaller apps, it would put smaller apps at a disadvantage. They've also defined specific categories like news, finance, business, dating, and others that will no longer be able to leverage promotional content. So they're really defining kind of who is in their top tier, what that qualification level is, and if you are, you get these benefits. Now, they do have what's called an eligibility fast track for developers who might be smaller or apps that are newer to the store that are being introduced. To get this, you have to be part of the Play Partner program, you have to be part of the Media Experience program, and you have to run pre-registration if your app is new in the store. And what that does is it gives you 6 months. It gives you a 6-month window to have access to these premium developer tools before Google takes them away if you don't start to meet some of those thresholds. And so what this means is the launch process on Google Play is probably going to change for a lot of developers, for people who are doing new apps. If you're launching a new app or you have been using Google Play as a test sandbox for new releases, you might want to rethink doing that, because if you introduce a new SKU in the Play Store and it doesn't hit a certain number of DAUs within 6 months, you're not going to get these tools back. So you have to launch, and you're probably going to have to think, how do we ramp up? Where are the best places to test? How can we do this in a 6-month period before we potentially lose some of these tools? The other thing that I think is huge news is CSLs are going to be able to target organic search keywords. This is absolutely huge. Your conversion rate in the Google Play Store determines your ranking in search. That's the #1 factor. And when you look at what custom store listings do, they increase your conversion rate because you're building a better funnel and you're targeting specific users. With Google Play, you're going to be able to target specific keywords organically for CSLs. It's a huge change for ASO. When you're doing this, keywords can't be entered manually. What happens is Google essentially gives you a list of keywords from that listing conversion analysis page that they have inside the Play Store console. And you can say, hey, this CSL is for these keywords. And when anyone searches for that keyword, it's your CSL that pops up. The impact on conversion rate, we think, is going to be huge. But more importantly, the impact to people who are not investing in doing this is going to be huge in a bad way, because your conversion rate is going to go down because you're going to appear less relevant to users than anyone who has been able to get a little bit more customized. So this is actually very, very essential to succeed in the Play Store over the next 12 months. Now, one thing that I want to point out is these suggestions that Google give you for keywords, they're very limited. Usually 80% of the keywords that people actually search for your app on are bucketed in other, and Google doesn't reveal them when you look at these tools inside the Google Play Store. So really, it's just the major keywords that are currently driving you traffic. And that's one point I want to make, right? A lot of people talk about how there's not a lot of transparency when it comes to search. Apple and Google do not tell people how many search downloads there are per keyword. They do not tell you how many searches there are per keyword. Any tool that's trying to tell you that is completely lying to you. They're getting like some search ads data and trying to use that for organic estimation, which is complete BS. Don't listen to that. But anyway, when you look at what's going on here, it's like you're getting information from Google about where you are today, but not where you need to be. Google's not telling you what you're missing out on. They're telling you what you already have. And if that's all you focus on, you're not focused on growth. You're only focused on maintaining what you have. So this is a good checkpoint to know, where do I get my traffic from today? But it's important to continue doing ASO to figure out, where can I grow my visibility tomorrow? From a best practice standpoint, when you're looking at CSLs, we look at this just like audiences and keywords, right? What are my features? What are the keywords users are leveraging to search for those features? And then how can I build out something that's most performant for that, whether I A/B test it or I just get best practices in there so I can perform better. But it's always feature-driven. It's always audience-driven. That's how we think about these things. Finally, I don't know what I would do if I didn't talk about AI a little bit, but my message is a little bit different from an AI perspective because we've been experimenting with this for a while. Obviously, the stores, Google in particular, have integrated Gemini. There are ways that you can automatically build descriptions, long and short descriptions, leverage your main store listing and your search keywords to do this. But I think it's important to proceed with caution because these things don't factor in your current keyword performance. There's no exposure there. It doesn't factor in your previous experiments. It doesn't know what has worked for you in the past or not. It's just looking at your content. It's a language learning algorithm. It's not something that is, predictively looking at what your conversion rates have been. And that's a huge factor in ASO. Language learning models are not the same as kind of predictive quantitative models that will say this will convert better, right? So it's important to remember that. The other thing is, Google has a lot of rules about app quality. They have a lot of rules for particular categories that might be kind of gray areas in their store. If you've had a lottery app or a social casino app or a real casino app, you know about all of their gray areas and how you have to walk really carefully. AI doesn't take this into consideration. We have literally had people try to use AI, use a Google-generated description, and then get rejected by Google because it wasn't compliant with their own rules. So it's important when you do this, if you are going to use this, that a human actually goes, reads what it generates. Look at it as a suggestion, but don't use it wholesale, and then have a human write your description, taking into account what you know about your product and the regulations in your space, because it's very, very important. So in summary, right, out of all the new Apple features, I'm personally most excited about the deep linking in CPPs. I think that's really going to change the game from an engagement standpoint and complete the funnel. I think anyone that's not doing this 12 or 18 months from now is going to have a real hard time being competitive in the user acquisition space. I think it's going to be a big deal. Focus state and search behavior, we're paying attention to how that might change the way people search when they're re-downloading versus when they're searching for something new, and how we can leverage those suggestions in our software. And then, CSLs can target keywords. All I can say about this is do that. You have to invest in CSLs now. If you're not doing that, if you don't have the resources to do that, there are a lot of people, including Gummicube, that can help. But if you're not doing that, you're going to be at a huge disadvantage and wonder why your search rankings don't look so good 12 months from now. And also, just keep in mind, and I say this every time I get on stage, when you look inside the Google Developer Console, when you look at kind of these new CSL tools and Google's suggesting you keywords, that's where you are today. It's not where you want to be. It doesn't mean those are the only keywords to focus on. When you look at a lot of the ASO tools that are out there, and they're trying to tell you things like search volume for keywords, and they're using words like popularity, they're just giving you Apple search ads data in terms of what paid search popularity looks like. They're not giving you data about what organic search volume looks like. And there's no one who gets data from Apple and Google about downloads per keyword. So when you look at those things, it's a good kind of bomb that needs to go off in your mind thinking, oh, this is not really accurate. They're giving me what I want to see, but it's not real. So anyway, really great to be here. I'm going to be at the booth, so is the team. We're happy to answer questions, jam with you if you have any issues with your apps. We've been doing this for about 15 years now, so it's been a little while. So we do know a few things, and really happy to be able to be here and chat with everyone. Thanks.